Welcome to Rules Enactments Intergovernmental Relations Committee meeting. Please stand for the pledge. Legislator Elner, can you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Legislator Elner?
Here.
Legislator Nassarino?
Present.
Chairwoman Agnizio?
Present. Moving on to number 3 is acceptance of minutes from June 24th, 2024 and July 11th, 2024. Have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to number 4 is the approval for the Sheriff's Office ARPA funding reallocation for a new building at 101 Deacon Smith Hill Road, which is Camp Herlick. A budgetary amendment was made pursuant to Resolution 135 of 2022, where $2 million was appropriated for school safety infrastructure upgrades throughout Putnam County Sheriff's Office, through the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office has requested the $1 million of the funds originally allocated now be reallocated to pursue additional projects to support the county's school children. The administration has proposed, and the Sheriff's Office is requesting, that $1 million be reallocated to partially fund a new building for use by Camp Herlick at the county's property located at 101 Deacon Smith Hill Road in Patterson. Any discussion? Legislator? Nassarino.
I cannot emphasize enough how great Camp Herlick is. I have championed them since I've been on the town board and as all my years on the legislature. I've worked with the Gentiles for many years and Dean Stitchberry as well throughout the years. However, that being said, I was taken aback to see a $1 million allocation on this month's agenda using the ARPA funds, which were allocated towards school safety under the sheriff's purview. I called the sheriff, and he knew little about the situation at the time of our conversation. As a legislator representing the town of Patterson, I was never brought into the fold and knew nothing about what was being considered until it appeared on the agenda. Jennifer Caruso appeared before this committee last month and spoke of the reallocation for school safety purposes, and we were all very supportive, but failed to be open and transparent and mention that it was for the Camp Herlick project. Dean Stitchberry was at that meeting and did not say anything, and we were all scratching our heads wondering why he was even there. In retrospect, I believe that this was all planned and was in the works for quite a while and practically consummated before it hit our agenda. While I am not opposed, and I'd be very clear about that, to this project, I do have many, many questions. This is a non-for-profit organization. This is a camp. It's not a school. We don't know what the building, $1 million building, will be used for. We don't know if private donors will be helping pay for it, or if Camp Herlick will be matching any of the funds moving forward to erect this building. And how does it actually tie into school safety? And I really feel that we need to ask the sheriff if part of this allocation can still go towards school safety for our public school system. I know time is of the essence, but we do have 4 months. And it has been quite common practice for us to swap the ARPA funding in order to not lose the money before us and then be able to replenish those funds after a project is realized. So I personally would like to make a motion to table this and so we can get this matter resolved and get all our outstanding questions covered, because there seems to be many from where I sit.
I was going to say, before that, may I ask a couple quick questions? Okay, I would just like to know what the building is. And this resolution says it is to partially fund, so what's the total cost of the building?
We're all available to answer any
Okay,
questions
so
you
come
may
on.
have. We're here for.
Well, then come on up, come forward.
Good evening.
Hello.
We're here and open to answering any of those questions, if you'd
Well,
like. to
I would
answer
think
them.
as the sitting legislator who represents the town of Patterson, that I would have some knowledge about this before it hit the agenda. And I was really taken aback that nobody even included me or even gave an inkling to what was being proposed and considered until it was before us last month.
Well, there was no ill will.
Well, there was no inkling on my part to know this was even being considered, but I guess that's how we roll.
I think we were just working to get our ducks in a row before we presented to the legislature to
I'm
give you
sure
all
there were
of
plenty of
the
meetings.
information.
I'm sure there were plenty of meetings prior to getting your ducks in a row as planning stages and trying to formate this allocation and this plan. But that's just for my perspective.
I could provide maybe a brief overview of, how we got to where we're at today, if that might help.
Yes,
Madam
please.
Chairman,
Yes, please.
if I may, I just want to know, what's the building, what's the purpose of the building, and what's the total cost?
So the building is known as Schweiger Hall. It's a main building on the Camp Hurley campus. It has the cafeteria area and some other programs that Mr. Stitchberry could certainly talk to. But back in the previous administration, the condition of that facility was brought to our attention. Formerly, I was in DPW at the time, and we worked with Camp Hurley and the administration. You may recall, we actually came to the legislature back sometime in, I'm going to say, late 2021, early 22 maybe, and we had an appropriation from the legislature for 50% of the cost to do a repair of the roof. We went out to bid for the roof, bids came in, they were considerably high. We went back out to bid again, and there was no real acceptable bids, I believe. And then we brought a consultant in to do an evaluation based on some feedback we got from bidders. And it was estimated that the proper repair and replacement of that roof structure, which is kind of tricky architecture, would be close to $500,000 for all of the repair costs and soft costs associated with preparing the bid documents. That got a whole different conversation brewing as to how can we partner with the camp to try to do that. There was some conversations with the previous administration, then there was the change of administration, and I certainly left the department and switched hats. But Dean then brought it to the attention of DPW and the administration that this is something that they really needed for the long-term vitality of the camp and to continue programs that they have today. The lease arrangement that we currently have with Camp Hurlick is such that that responsibility for that infrastructure, it falls on the county. And so the camp, recognizing the extensive cost, at one point was willing to pay 50% of the repair costs of it. But when the costs got to that $500,000 number, we really started looking at the cost benefit of putting that kind of money into a building that was old. Fast forward to trying to find the financing, and that's where we're at today.
And
Just
through
a
the chair.
question,
Legislator
Bob,
Nasrino.
just on this topic. Is this the same building that, because during my tenure, we did repair a building? And we all took a site walk too, I believe, so I would like to do that too, which is another reason why I'd like to table this. Was this the same building that we repaired? I thought that was in 2016, Diane. Do you remember we had that resolution?
I don't.
2016, we repaired a building, and we negotiated the lease.
That was a whole different capital project. That was
Yes.
actually for the
So-
construction of a
right,
brand new
we-
building.
right. So
And
we
the
did
county
that
Yep, the county had
in
no cash outlay.
2015, approximately 2015, and we did that, the roof in 2021, and now we're being requested to invest $1 million. Now, this is leased property. This
The
is,
roof funds never got
it
spent.
never got spent.
As
So
far as
what?
I
So
know. There might have been
between-
some minor repairs that were done using those funds, but the replacement was never done.
So if it was in such deplorable condition in 2021, how was it maintained
That's
until
the-
now?
That was the patchwork repair.
Maybe
work
James
that
can
we
answer
did.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, hence we're at this table. I mean, the 20, sorry. Am I okay from here?
Yes, can you just
Go to the podium.
go to the podium, state your
Sure.
name, please?
So now I'm Dean Stitchberry, the Executive Director at Camp Hurlick. Thank you for the time. In answer to your question, the building, which was 2016, which was put up, was at our expense. We put that up, and then the lease was renegotiated. You're correct on that matter. But there was no expense to the county at that time. That was all independently invested by us into a new facility to effectively house administration offices, some open space, and then our housing for our weekend retreats and those kind of things. So that was what the new building was. The building we're talking about, which is Schweiger Hall, is kind of been there since 1968, is the primary dining hall, kitchen area, and it's also the home base for our school-age programs, which is a large part of the reason, which is our before and after care programs. When we ended up coming back from being in the Carmel schools, we have our children on the property every day from 6:30 to 6 in the morning through to 6:30 at night with the Carmel buses providing transportation backwards and forwards. So that is a building. In answer to your repair part, that has been the concern. I've been knocking on doors probably for at least 5 or 6 years since Bob Gentili, as you referenced, I've taken over from him. To the roof is basically been going downhill in terms of repair, and we're at the point where we kind of passed that point of trying to patch it, which is a conversation.
So with no disrespect, I'm just trying to get these questions answered before I can make an informed decision on allocating $1 million. And I love Camp Hurlick.
Absolutely, I
I live in
appreciate that.
Patterson. My kids went to Camp Hurlick. My kids were counselors in Camp Hurlick. I was just taken by surprise that this was on the agenda with no background information provided. Nothing that led up to the decision to move forward with this, nothing that led up to some of the history or answer. We didn't have a committee meeting where we could get these questions answered, and now we're asked to approve it this evening. So I find that very disheartening. So, and I need to have those questions answered before I could cast a vote.
If I can
Yes.
continue, so you said you hired a consultant. So, basic questions. What's the overall project cost? What's the design? What's the construction? Is the square footage going to, we're missing a lot of details.
Sure.
And I'm reading this resolution, and it says here, requesting that $1 million be reallocated to partially fund a new building. So that tells me this is going to cost more than $1 million, and before I can sign off, I want to know what the county is going to be responsible for above and beyond the million.
I mean, that's correct. It is for partially, the county will be partially funding Phase 1 of the new building, because what was available to us was $1 million of the ARPA funding from the sheriff's safety infrastructure. It
So
does-
how much are we adding to this? You guys are talking around, it's a simple question.
We don't know at this time what the final cost is going to be. We have estimates. Camp Hurlick, which we provided this to the legislature in advance. This is a letter of intent that we executed with Camp Hurlick, just doing some of the initial, working out some of the initial details. And Camp Hurlick is responsible for the design phase of the project, so they're working on plans and cost estimates at this time.
The cost estimate that we got from the consultant, to answer your question directly,
That's for the
was-
roof, correct?
That was for the roof at the time, but they also put a caveat in the report that said that the building might, a replacement building might cost somewhere between $130 and $150 per square foot. And it's over a 6,000 square foot building, so it's about right around $1 million for the replacement. But that would be a relatively generic building, and that's a late 2023 number. So we think the number that we have is somewhere around 1.2 million, a little bit more. The camp, pursuant to the LOI, has agreed to pick up the costs of anything in excess of $1 million, including the design effort.
I'm sorry, who is responsible for
The
that?
Camp Hurlick, they will pick it up, but they also want the results of the bid, which the county would be responsible for the letting of the project to make sure that we meet all the rules and regulations of the ARPA compliance. And since it is our building and we're making an investment in it, unlike the last project we did over there was no exchange of cash between the county and the camp, so they didn't have to go through the municipal bidding procedure.
Now, you mentioned $1 million for phase one. How many phases will there be?
So, you want me to answer that, or you want to? It could be completed at phase one. If this is approved by the legislature and the county executive, the plan would be, phase one would be build the new building. There's a threshold question that has to be passed before we can actually even get to that step. And we will start taking those steps, which will include the DEP. We would need permission from the DEP to allow the existing building to remain while the new building is being constructed because of the impervious surface rules. So there was a lot of homework that we had to do before we could even get to this point, vetting out what our requirements would be and the other stakeholders that would have a say in moving forward.
So what's the primary function of this building? What is it just going to be refurbished and rebuilt for the same purposes?
Effectively,
Which is what, for clarity?
The home, like I said, it's the primary kitchen and dining hall space during our summer, but also it's a primary base for our school-age programming, which is, follows the Carmel calendar, where we have the kids in the morning and in the afternoon and during whenever school is not in session. So that is Schweiger Hall is the primary licensed space for all of the school-age programming that we conduct.
So I just want to bring up that on 5/23 at the audit meeting, we spoke about what the use of the ARPA funding was going to be for. There was a brief synopsis by the sheriff. On 5/24, I asked that this be added to the protective services agenda, and you told me that the sheriff was more than clear, the chairman of protective services, Legislator Nasarino. Then I asked again on 5/28 for it to be added on 5/29. I can read the memo where you told me that the committees are at the sole discretion, and we may not share the same sentiment, but Commissioner Lewis and the sheriff provided a clear and rationale for the request and spoke about the county's focus on the deadline to demonstrate the use of the ARPA funding. Sheriff McConville provided a concise summary of impending allocations and said funding, and it was ended there. So to say that there was a surprise that this was on the agenda with a time constraint,
No.
and I was rejected those two requests is,
What I'm saying
I'm still
is-
speaking, I still have the floor. So to say that this was surprising when we have a certain amount of time left is a little ridiculous.
No, it's not.
Legislator
Chair.
Nasarino, yes.
So I'm going to rebut everything that you said. First of all, Sheriff McConville did say that, and that's exactly what I did say. But school safety is painted with a broad brush. And what I said tonight is I had no idea that Camp Hurlick was the chosen project that this money was going to be allocated for. And we still don't know if the sheriff, and which is another reason why I like to table this, still had any plans for that money in full or in partial for our public school children. So how does this constitute a school when it's a camp? How does that tie in? And I know we have the letter from O'Connie Davis, but, oh, he's here.
It's a safe place for school children to go. So
And how many children are Putnam County children that engage in this versus a camp that have out-of-county residents in
Well,
it?
the summer
Do we know
camp
that
has
ratio?
out-of-county residents,
What?
but the before and after programs are for the Carmel
Yes.
schools.
And how many children are engaged in that?
On a daily basis, there are 120 children in the before and after care programs on a daily basis.
If I may.
Yes.
Do you charge for the service?
For the school age, for the childcare, yes, we do.
I mean, where I sit, I just want to know more. There's not enough detail. I mean, if this came to physical services, you know, what's the overall square footage? What's the design? What's the environmental impact? From what you're saying, do we need to have a secret done? What's the timetable on this? Okay, is it a direct replacement? Is any of the equipment, because you're saying it's a cafeteria, it's a kitchen facility, will any of the existing equipment be repurposed? I'm not against anything. I just need to make an informed decision, and I don't have enough information at this time to make an informed decision.
Sheriff, would you
Yes.
like to weigh
Good
in on
evening.
this?
Can I answer Legislator Nassarino's question?
Yes, please.
Yes, I have $1 million allocated. I've been working with Commissioner Tully on the items that we seek to purchase for the schools in collaboration and cooperation with the schools, items that they have requested that I'd rather not articulate in public what they specifically are, but $1 million will cover those expenses to make the schools safer.
So that would be satisfactory to you that the other $1 million be allocated elsewhere?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just want to know,
Yes, Legislator Elmer.
the sheriff is about
If
to
I
say
also
something.
may, I'm sorry, Legislator, back in April, in our conversation with Commissioner Tully, we brought to the forefront the problems we were having with the life safeties management, the perimeter fencing, and the boiler system, and they have to be done almost overnight. So we had to allocate, that was the discussion about how we could transfer the money from one funding source to another funding source so that we could achieve compliance with that. Otherwise, we would have problems, not just in the correctional facility, but the entire facility as a whole.
And those projects are fully underway now as we speak.
And they're ARPA
Swapping
compliant.
the
That's
monies in order to not lose the ARPA funds, correct?
Correct.
Are there, through the chair, are there any private donors that are, this is a not-for-profit also, so is there any private donors that are going to contribute to this?
I'm sorry. I didn't get my steps in today, so I'm good.
Don't sit down.
I mean, part of the original conversation is to see if the ARPA money can be secured as a starting point. Do we have some funds put aside for capital projects? Absolutely, we do. That's why we are committing to a certain amount of money above and beyond to be able to help out to finish that. And to answer your question, we fully intend, like anything which could be moved, whether it's a kitchen and everything else like that, we would be supplying and refitting everything with everything that we can at our cost. So in order to do that.
Through the chair. Yeah, obviously, this is a very time-sensitive project, so have you hired an architect or an engineer to do your design?
We have started the process of having something done as far as an architect to have like a little bit more than a rendering so we could get something as what a cost would be in order to see if the proposal is something that would work financially within the allocated ARPA funds. And right now, I think, as Commissioner Tully said, it's looking like we could get the building done for that initial, but as far as the exact design and everything else like that, that would be to evolve as we get confirmation.
So I guess what I'm trying to determine is that I'm seeing a double-edged sword, okay? We have to encumber the ARPA funds, and we have to spend the ARPA funds. So I want to make sure that if we go forward with this, that we're far enough along in this process, that one, there's going to be no surprises, and two, we're going to meet the timetable. And conceptually, it sounds great, but like I said, I don't have enough to go forward on this.
If I may respond to that.
Yes.
Well, the timetable is such that we have to encumber the funds by the end of this year, but the project doesn't need to be completed until 2026. So that's why we're in a little bit of a time crunch with getting a contract with Camp Hurlick if we were to be approved to be able to encumber the funds for the Camp Hurlick project.
So Jennifer, so just please clarify this for me. So how do we approve to encumber $1 million when we don't know what the remainder expenses are? That we don't have a contract, that we don't have anything in writing saying what Camp Hurlick is responsible for, as he said, the kitchen and everything. I know when we did Butterfield, that kitchen was pretty expensive to do, so we're not dotting the i's, we're not crossing the t's, we're just allocating the money without having a comprehensive plan or review or anything that's binding to say where the responsibilities lie or what we're going to be responsible for, or any anticipated funds of phase two.
In order to draft such a contract, and our letter of intent spells it out, that the county's contribution is only limited up to that 1 million of ARPA funding, and anything over that, the camp is going to contract to be responsible for.
Yeah, and I would add that in, a number of the meetings that we had with Camp Hurlick, where we're...
Number of meetings.
Where there was a couple of them, where we having to talk about the condition and what we're going to do. The county executive made it very clear that if the legislature was to approve it, the maximum amount that the county would be willing to contribute would be that $1 million, and that's outlined in the LOI.
Yeah, but it says for phase one. There's a limitation on it, I'm reading right, it's phase one.
We could, if the phase one is troubling, that could be removed. At the time, we were referring to phases because of the whole issue with the demolition of the existing structure. So phase one is really building the new one. Phase two would be the demolition and site work needed to bring the building back into, the existing building back to grade and to raise that building to be in compliance. So it was kind of a loosely written phase one, phase two. And then also at one point in time, we didn't know the outlook for the $1 million and how well that would work, although Dean had said that the camp would be able to come up with a certain amount beyond that 1 million, which is articulated in the LOI. We were also thinking that a second phase would be a phase that would be initiated by the camp. If the building could be occupied, but they needed to make an additional investment outside county funds, that would happen in any future phase, and it would be at the sole responsibility of Camp Hurlick.
Yes, that could be done, but it's not tangible.
Yeah.
There's nothing set in stone to say that that's how it will be. So
We can't set it in stone until we have the...
well, we can't blindly approve this either. So we're asking questions that we need to have addressed, because you don't know if it's phase one, you don't know if it's phase two, or where the responsibility lies for any future expenses. So we could put $1 million into this investment and not have the adequate funds or the approved funds moving forward if you come back to us at a future time.
Now, Jennifer, excuse me, Jennifer, you mentioned that you don't know if this will be approved,
So, yeah.
right? So wait, if it's not approved, what happens to this funding? Because how many months is that going to take? And now we need, by January, you said you don't know if it would be approved, the building. There's a possibility of the ARPA funding.
What,
Did you mention that tonight?
The
No?
reallocation, I think, is what she was referring to
yes,
make sure that
this committee
would approve the
us to move
reallocation.
forward with the
You mentioned,
reallocation.
you mentioned the building soil. Did you mention anything with that? Anything?
I did not.
The DEP, I think she was talking about the DEP,
If I may,
heading to
the concern of legislator Nasarino, I think that was shared, and if I'm talking out of turn, Dean, tell me, but that was shared with Camp Hurlick, because they didn't know if they could come up with any amount over $1 million. So we've agreed that, once we go out to bid and a number is established, we can either award the bid or not award the bid. If we award the bid, that means that we feel confident that we can build the structure for the amount approved by the county, if it's approved, and the amount that the camp could add to the building. If it's not approved, then it's going to put us in a situation where we then have to determine, are we going to look at the repairs? Because that is our responsibility to repair that important building for Camp Hurlick. So one way or another, we will have to make some level of investment in that structure.
Why wouldn't it be approved?
It's a county building.
Why wouldn't a new building be approved, you're saying? Is there any reason?
Well, according to this July,
No,
Madam Chair,
because we don't,
I think,
per this July 25th letter, part of the phasing, request permission from New York City DEP to build a new building prior to demolition of the existing
Right.
structure, okay? Has permission been requested from
that's what
DEP?
I'm saying. I'm
Not
saying,
yet. We
well, this is
haven't.
what
Okay,
the
what's the
legend said.
turnaround with DEP?
Right.
that could be done relatively quick.
And what if they don't
I
approve it?
respectfully disagree.
And if they don't approve it?
I can't get DEP to answer a simple letter in
So
70
there's-
days.
There was a memorandum of understanding, there's some deeded restrictions with respect to certain properties, and they have a responsibility to respond in a certain timeframe with respect to those. The instances that you're referring to, Legislator Elner, we face those every day with the DEP on federal projects and things like this, but these ones where there's a contractual relationship between the county and the DEP, they've always been a good partner in helping us achieve our objectives. And I think they will in this instance.
But that was my point. If the DEP doesn't approve it, and now we're 4 more months down the road,
And $1
right?
million
And $1 million is lost, because now it's too late to reallocate it to anyone else. That was my
The
question.
approval from DEP is not whether we build a new building or not. The approval from the
Right, you would-
DEP is whether we can build a
Can.
new building
Can.
concurrently while the existing structure
Remains.
remains.
Unless it has to come down first.
Yeah. And otherwise, then we're having a different conversation with the camp to see if they can figure out their banquet needs during construction, if the existing building has to come down first.
I want more information. I mean, the other part of this is you guys have been excellent and creative about moving ARPA funds so there's not lost. Is there another place where ARPA funds can be reallocated so that this project can be done on a proper timely basis?
No.
I think
Because whether it comes from the general fund or ARPA, it sounds like we need to commit to do this project. But I have concerns that we're going to be able to pull this off with the limited information that's been presented to me at this time.
This project, one of the things we did before coming to the board was we checked with our ARPA consultant, and they deemed, because of the discretionary category that this funding is in, it would be eligible for the use of the ARPA funds,
That,
as opposed to, giving those dollars back to the federal government.
Well, the thought behind it was that it was rather related to schools. We were trying to keep it in the contemplated area of allocations that the legislature did through the original resolution. So we were trying to keep it in a subject that was similar to where the funds were originally allocated. As school safety, it was school safety, so it's a safe place for children before and after. I mean, versus putting it in a highway project, for instance. So,
Anyone else?
that was the thought behind the idea.
I'd like to make a motion to table.
Oh, I'm sorry. Legislator Sage.
No, I was just gonna play devil's advocate here because it is September. It will be September at the full. What projects, I mean, this is $1 million. We did hear from the sheriff tonight that he was all right with this going to Camp Ehrlich. We have $1 million here that has to be encumbered by the end of the year. Encumbered means, explain encumbered, just to be
Either by-
committed.
Via contract or a purchase order. In this instance, it would be a contract.
Right, so encumbered contract by the end of the year. A contract doesn't say we have to have, blueprint plans. We have to have a contract. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I understand that the questions that we have before us, but how are we going to encumber $1 million at the end of the year to the schools and to children? I think this is to me personally, I think it's a good project. I've been to Schweiger Hall before. I spent, with the Rotary. They do before and after programs. It is a county building. And if it's not encumbered by the end of the year, then what? We lose $1 million. We have a project in front of us right now
I don't think we're saying we're not.
That's ready to go.
I think we're saying we want more information.
Right.
Not saying.
I just want to be vigilant.
Not saying we're
and-
against the project
Yeah.
at all, but I think there's.
No, I don't think
questions
anybody is.
that
I think
were-
you're all just doing your
There's a
due
lot of- yeah,
diligence.
right. There's a lot
But
of
I just want to
questions
play
that
devil's
were unanswered.
advocate, yeah.
So that was it.
Some of the information, I think both parties feel more comfortable knowing that if we are going to move forward with this and there's a commitment to move forward, then some of the information can be gotten more readily because there starts to become financial responsibilities and getting more design, putting the project out to bid. We get more answers doing all of that, but we can't do any of that until we start, until we encumber the funds for the project and start the process of getting a contract in place.
I
I
may.
understand, yes.
Okay, any successful construction project, okay? It's called critical path management, CPM. One domino's got to flip to another domino. So the first thing you need is concept. And in this case, conceptual design of the building. And that will include square footage, HVAC, power demands, etc. Okay? Then, once you have that, then you have the ability to go and look for potential designers, architects, engineers, and get an estimate of what that's going to cost. And then depending upon what they come through, because some people will gold plate things. Are we going to go with a ugly aluminum building, or are we going to go with a stick-built wooden building? Are we going to have cedar shingles? There's all these details that are going to affect the price. And then you have to play the game is, okay, we want a better exterior, so we're going to shrink the square footage of the building so it's a smaller pad and concrete, and we could do less. So all that I'm saying is for me to say, yes, I want the details, because the devil is always in the details. And every single thing that we're going out to bid for construction is coming in higher than estimated. And it's not just here, it's in my private work. I see everything. Estimates are way off. I'm talking more than 40% off. So all that I'm asking for is how quickly can we get more of a concept, a more definitive, what are we going to keep, what are we going to use, are we going to air condition this? Because it sounds like this is going to be used all year. Is the service now, is the amp service necessary there, or do we have to come from the street? Because if I'm not mistaken, this building is 750 to 1,000 feet from the street, so you may have to dig everything up in order to give more power. I just want to make the right decision with taxpayer money.
And from my end, as you alluded, being a non-for-profit, there is a decent amount of expense in the investigative process from us, which we are willing to take on. I just want to make sure from my end, before I put the non-for-profit money into that process, that there is, I'll say a fair chance, I'm not going to say a guarantee, that that funding would be available to offset what we're willing to put on top of it as a starting point, to make sure that all of, like you said, someone mentioned ducks in a row. To your point, yes, there's some unknowns, some of those design things, when we put the new building in, we did shore up the infrastructure with underground power lines and transformers, and all those things are in place, and effectively we would be removing a building which is carrying the load for 7,000 square feet, and would be transferring some of that across and probably upgrading some infrastructure concerns that we may have had, whether it's electric or water supply or HVAC or anything else like that. So yes, I would like to be able to go out and do that process, but from my end is to my board, just to make sure that there is some sort of, I won't say certainty, but just before I expense money, because I have to go through my committee board as well. So I'm happy with, I've got a design right now, which is, like I said, is a sketch for an architect, which we've spent money for. Happy to provide that.
Wonderful.
And
Those are things we don't know. We weren't privy to any of that
and
information.
it is all relatively recent over the course of, for the most part, this month. Like, it has been evolving very, very quickly. It's not something which I've been sitting on. We've had discussions about repairs for many years, but the actual discussions of potentially reallocating some money is a summer conversation at best for me, which for me, when I was here last meeting was kind of sitting in to understand what the process might be coming up, to kind of hear, and if we had a chance to kind of have a conversation or just to start the process, knowing full well that there are another steps to go through rules and audit and through full legislature before we can even approve it. So I'm happy to provide, but
So how quickly, because obviously time is of the essence, and I'd make myself available I'd even come to you, because I just want to see, I just want my answers, so I can.
Well, I think it needs to be
'cause-
provided to everyone.
Yeah,
That's-
because what you're saying is no guarantees. I'm very much inclined, but I just need to dot the i's and cross the t's.
from my end the location, happy, you mentioned a walkthrough, happy to set up as soon as physically and feasibly possible, a walkthrough to kind of explain what we're doing, what the need is. You'll be able to see right then and there what we're trying to achieve. As far as plans, I'm not too sure from Commissioner Tully. I'm happy to share what I have, which I shared with you in recent weeks, which was like last week. So I'm happy to forward that. So for me, I'm just understanding the process. This is my first time here.
And I, through the chair.
Yes.
We understand that too. And so we're very supportive.
I
We're
appreciate
just
that.
still not secure in all the answers to our questions, and there are many outstanding questions. I mean, another option, couldn't we swap the money as we did in Phillipstown and we did with the sheriff and use the $1 million for capital project and then reverse for this project? Should the project slow down or there be any procrastination in the process? Couldn't we do that?
I mean, protecting the money
Mike
is
Lewis,
paramount.
you could speak to that. We've done it several times in the last 2 months. Is that, if we're worried about the ARPA funds and spending it, we need to give this careful consideration. And we need to know A, B, and C, not just A and B, so wouldn't that be an option as we've repeatedly done?
Our ARPA consultant, when we took the 2024 capital plan, gave a list of what is eligible and not eligible. Every single project that was approved by the legislature for 2024 is ARPA eligible. So we could do the flip-flop like we just did for the sheriff's boilers and other sheriff projects. So that could be
Garrison
done.
Landing in Phillipstown, we just did that as well.
Correct.
If I may, I'm all for making this as easy as possible, but I want to make sure all our i's are dotted and our t's are crossed.
And as I've mentioned before, the money could also be used for any type of DOT bid projects. That would help as well. But to your point, it could be used for other purposes if that's what you guys choose to do.
Thank you, Mike.
If I may, I'd still like to make a motion to table this.
Okay, there's a motion on the table.
And then, getting some of the answers and sewing this up a little bit more and maybe amending that letter of intent to not include a phase 2, where we might be responsible for that in writing, and some other details and questions that we have coming, if we think of and pose to you and wrap this up. So
Okay,
not
there's
that-
motions on the table. I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And moving on to 5 is also, we're going to have to make a motion to table. Budgetary Amendment 24A-073, which is reallocation for Camp Perlick also. All in favor?
Aye.
So Mike, I'm going to ask you to come up again, because we have, moving on to number 6, is the approval, the Department of Motor Vehicle ARPA funding reallocation.
Well, Lewis, I'll sit in the back. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, so this was $303,707 appropriated for highway infrastructure. County clerk has requested a portion of these funds, which is $31,039, be used to purchase mobile equipment from the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles in order to have more flexibility to process DMV transactions. So if you would like to.
Sure. So I could expand upon that a little bit. So it's been definitely a vision and has become a priority of mine and my staff to come up with opportunities where we can expand our footprint. In 2024, so many things are getting automated, there's so many options for mobility that there's no reason why we can't expand our footprint, get out in the community more, bring our services to the community rather than have them come to us all the time. So I've learned in recent months, that DMV offers a mobile solution that's not tethered to anything. So it's not in the bus, or it's not in a satellite office or anything like that. It is a purely mobile, laptop-based solution. So if you could imagine when you go to DMV and you get your driver's license renewed, that big camera and all that stuff, they have a mobile version of that. We also have a mobile laptop-driven version of a regular DMV workstation that has the credit card machine and the little tablet and all that stuff. So I had spoken, it was really something that we thought about doing. It was conversations that we had probably back in late spring with the administration to see if there was an opportunity of maybe tapping into some ARPA money for that. I'd spoken to County Executive Byrne, I spoke to Commissioner of Finance Mike Lewis, and they thought that there was an opportunity to do that. So I secured an estimate for a workstation. It's actually 2 workstations. So what you get is, you get what's called an ICW, so that's an image capture workstation. So you could work from that, but predominantly that's used to capture the photograph. It's a pretty pricey piece of equipment. That's probably the lion's share of that cost. And then we did another workstation. So I will tell you, the reason why I'm here now is twofold. First, obviously, there are timelines with respect to encumbering the ARPA funds. Second, it is a 6 to 12 month lead time to get this equipment. I will be completely honest with you. I would have liked to have had more conversations with State DMV to get all of the nitty gritty on exactly when and where we can use this equipment. I have had preliminary conversations with State DMV and with some of my colleagues where you're able to do this, say, if we had like the office space, if Mike Cunningham would be so kind, maybe some office space at Butterfield at the senior center over there, maybe even if there's room like in the Kohler Center down in Mayapack, things of that nature. I have to figure out all the security nitty gritty with State DMV, but when I spoke to our liaisons in Albany, these are the types of situations where they are used. Just another thing that I liked, that was kind of sold it to me, was I know that New York State DMV actually opens up a booth at the New York State Fair up in Syracuse. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we're able to do some DMV work at the Putnam County Fair up at the Veterans Park? So it is a completely mobile solution. The equipment, it's proprietary, so we can only purchase it from State DMV. So that is the quote that we included with the packet here tonight. So I think it's a really good opportunity for our Putnam County DMV to expand its footprint throughout the community and hopefully get to the citizens instead of always having the citizens come over to us in Brewster. I know it gets difficult sometimes when you talk about the western side and even the southern portions of the county. So I really want to try to make this successful, and I think it's a win-win if we're able to use some ARPA funds for it.
That sounds great. Now, I was thinking, what about home visits with that? Would you be able to do for disabled that can't get out?
So it would be difficult practically to set up for a home visit. If we had it tethered to a vehicle, that might be something, but the vehicle costs are so much more, exponentially so much larger. Getting this equipment for $31,000 is fantastic. We'll be able to use our staff. What you could do is, you can go to, I know that in Erie County they do this, we could actually go to like nursing home facilities at different times throughout the year and take care of non-driver IDs and things of that nature for our senior population who may be restricted to facilities. That's definitely an option that we can do. But just having the opportunity to getting out throughout the community, once a week at a town hall or once a week at another county facility throughout the county to, use the resources that we have at Putnam DMV and just kind of bring a little piece of it on the road, I think is going to be fantastic customer service for the people of Putnam County.
Great, I think it's wonderful. Anyone? Yes?
If I may, Commissioner Bartolotti, you have mentioned now that if someone renews their registration online, the county does not get their share.
They do now. So I will tell you, Starting this year, I'm actually very excited about this as well, because it's great for us. We were able to work with Commissioner Schroeder and work with our legislators up in Albany, that it is actually a flat across the board revenue retention for us. So whether it's processed via mail, whether it's processed via the office or processed online, we get 10.75%. So we get less in office now, but we get more across the board. So it's actually been a great revenue share for us. And we're able to actually become partners with state DMV in using these other modern methods to get your DMV work done. But having said that, there are a good number of transactions that you can't do online. You have to come into an office, especially when you're talking about Real ID and EDLs and things of that nature, enhanced driver's licenses, and when you have to get license plates issued and things like that. This mobile equipment, at least down the road, we might start small at first and do more common transactions just to get a feel for how it's going to work out logistically. But we could potentially be issuing license plates, we could be doing Real IDs and EDLs right there. It has everything. Those two machines for $31,000, it will be no different than Windows 11 and Windows 8 at our DMV in Brewster.
And so, like you're just saying, for everyone out there, Real ID and, an enhanced driver's license, federal government is requiring that you have a Real ID to get on a plane if you're not carrying your passport with you.
You have to have a Real ID document by May of 2025.
Okay, so now, in theory, you could go to the other side of the county, you can go to Putnam Valley Town Hall, you can say, we're gonna be here, and this way, those residents don't have to drive across, or Phillipstown, and they could bring their supporting documents, and you could process it right
That is correct.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
I think this is a great idea.
I do too. I think it's a great initiative and a great service to the residents of Putnam County, especially our aging population. You say would rather go to the town hall, the library, or Patterson Rec Center, whatever it may be, and be able to process the things they need to process, their license or registration, or whatever it may be. So it's great. So I'm very supportive.
Anyone else? Mr. Bianchi.
Mike, thanks for taking the initiative to do this. You're serving our population well, and we appreciate it. Your vision going out on the road one day a week?
Yes, I think that's how. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to keep the impact, financial impact, as small as possible, especially in the beginning. So we would probably grab a couple of employees from our office and send them out on the road. So I'm thinking that one day a week would probably be a good place to start if we could, pick locations. I'm envisioning we're going to have to get the locations approved by state DMV because we're bringing their equipment, we are processing their transactions. So we would have to come up with a short list of some locations, make sure that they're okay with that, and then yes, we would. I'm thinking one day a week is probably feasible, at least in the beginning.
Can we do some kind of outreach to the seniors out there and to the general public, just to let them know that we're going to be out there?
100%.
Anyone in the audience? Oh, I'm sorry, Legislature.
So just to be clear, this is $31,000 that's coming from highway infrastructure studies and being reallocated to the DMV mobile equipment project.
That's correct.
Do we know what projects it's coming from? Or is it just a general fund?
That's above my pay grade.
The 303,000, that's actually was part of the original ARPA allocation. And we're just taking money from there and moving it to this project.
So it's coming from the 350?
It's coming from that 303,000. So now it'll be less in that particular project.
And just to point out, I appreciate the detailed quote that we have in front of us. We know exactly where the money's going to go, and I feel very confident. I think this is a really great project.
Very good.
Oops, sorry.
Thank you for your hard work. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the ARPA funding reallocation for DMV mobile equipment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to number 7 is the approval for a budgetary amendment, 24A077, which is the ARPA funding for the DMV mobile equipment. Make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Before moving on to agenda item number 8, I'm going to appoint a committee chair pro tem, subject to a vote of approval of the committee. I do not believe that this proposed charter change necessarily presents a conflict for me, but because the discussion of this item could include issues currently before the Board of Ethics, I'm recusing myself to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. I will be appointing Legislator Yonke as Chair Pro Tem, and I call for a vote of approval from the committee. Members, are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I now relinquish the chair to Legislator Yonke for the duration of agenda item 8.
Item number 8 is the approval of a local law to amend the Charter of Putnam County by amending Article 8, Section 8.01, entitled Department of Law County Attorney. This was a request that I made, and it's because the county attorney has a unique relationship with the legislature. It's a different relationship than the legislature has with any of the other county departments or department heads. There's a long history of the question of which branch of government the county attorney is loyal to and his responsibilities. We all know that in the event of a conflict with the county executive and the legislature, the county attorney defaults to being the representative of the legislature. There's a delicate balance of the powers between the legislative and executive branches. It makes perfect sense that the legislature, who approves the appointment of the county attorney, should have the authority to remove the county attorney with a 2/3 vote. As far as the county attorney's outside employment, the county attorney position is a full-time job. It requires 100% attention to the business of the county by the county attorney. The deputy county attorneys are not permitted to work outside of the job, so it makes sense to memorialize the same for the county attorney in the charter. With that, we'll open discussion. Yes, first members of the committee.
Well, I think it's, Mr. Chair, I think it's fair to say that this charter change is merely to safeguard. It is not an intent to implement anything at this time, but it gives the legislature a voice. And as Legislator Yonke just said, when push comes to shove, if there's a conflict between the administration or the legislature, then the county attorney serves the legislature. So this merely gives us a voice should we need to exercise it. That is not our intent here tonight. Our intent is to solidify what we think would be fair and equitable, especially that the DAs are subject to that, subject to the rule of not having any private practice as well. But that being said, I think we should memorialize that too, but I would like to amend this resolution to exempt the present county attorney from that rule, but have it moving forward be implemented. Is that clear?
We have a motion, and just for the record, I'm an ex officio member of this committee. I'm a non-voting member, so I won't be voting or seconding or making any motions tonight.
So I make a motion to
Do we have a
amend the
second?
resolution to exempt the current county attorney, subject to engaging in private practice, but moving forward, that would be implemented for any future county attorneys.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The amendment carries. Anyone else on the committee? Legislator Crowley.
I'd like to request that the chairman read my memo into the minutes, please.
I'll let you read it.
Okay, or the clerk can read it.
I'm sorry?
Or the clerk can read it. You don't want to read it?
No.
Oh, okay. So this was addressed on August 26th, signed by myself, Legislator Montgomery, and Legislator Goldman, for a proposed change to the county charter. We have reviewed the proposed change to the county charter. We have serious concerns to share with our legislative colleagues. One, most compellingly, why is this being presented now in the middle of August? Why was this rushed onto the agenda with only 5 days' notice? Has anyone considered the optics here? The county attorney has a pending ethics complaint on which the ethics board has not yet provided a decision. It appears the proposed change in law allowing us to fire the county attorney is being rushed before the aforementioned ethics decision comes out. We're very concerned that approving the proposed change will appear to represent unlawful retaliatory action. In fact, certain colleagues may wish to reconsider recusing themselves from voting on this proposal to avoid being subject to allegations of retaliation. In our opinion, it is for the ethics board, not us in the legislature, to determine the propriety or impropriety of the conduct undertaken on both sides of the pending complaint. More empathetically, it is arguably inappropriate for us to take any action at the present time without the guidance of the neutral opinion. We urge all of our colleagues once again to ask themselves why now? Why without input from the ethics board? Why is it being rushed forward? That seems to be the theme of tonight, not rushing things forward. Is this retaliation? Will it be perceived to be retaliation? Should we, the authors of this memorandum, be brought before a state, New York State, or federal court to answer for this proposed action? We write to go on record saying we are opposed. We believe the timing of this proposal will be perceived to be unlawful retaliation for the county attorney's complaint to the ethics board. We do not believe there is any compelling justification to act on this now. The allegations that the county attorney committed a crime was persuasively refuted by Paul Eldridge, Director of Personnel. Mr. Eldridge's neutrality and professionalism are beyond reproach, and his experience in public service is unmatched. We credit Mr. Eldridge's assessment. For these reasons, we urge our colleagues to table the proposal pending the decision from the Ethics Board and proper review, comment, and consideration that will result from their recommendations.
Yes, Legislator Goldman.
Thank you, Chairman. Why are we rushing through this today for a vote? Why not 6 months ago? Why not a year ago? Why not next year? This is being rushed through with only a minimum of 5-day notice, which is really not appropriate. I requested 3 items be put on this committee's agenda. On May 29th, July 16th of this year, Kevin Byrne, the county executive, requested the same items be put on January 12th, 2024, and March 10th, 2023. And the answer I've received is when they're ready to do the shit. Why are we afraid to not debate issues? Why are we not afraid to do things for the betterment of Putnam County and our community? Don't rush this. Let this wait. The county attorney has a pending ethics complaint in which the ethics board has not yet provided a decision. It appears that the proposed change in the law allowing the county legislature to fire the county attorney is being rushed before the ethics board decision comes out. It appears to me, and people who actually look at this, that this is political and a retaliation action to try to influence the Board of Ethics, which is not right. The allegations that the county attorneys committed a crime was rebunked by Paul Eldridge, the Putnam County Director of Personnel. Maybe it might be justified, but not now. But we must wait until the Ethics Board comes out with a decision before we make a decision on this. I urge my colleagues to table this until the Ethics Board comes out with a decision. Thank you.
I'd like to address a couple of issues. You say you want to debate issues, but you don't want to debate this issue.
We're not debating it. Okay.
You said you had 5 days' notice. This thing's been in our boxes for 2.5 weeks. You've had
original was 5 days.
You've had
wasn't it?
2.5 weeks to review this. Well, that's our rule. Our rule is that, and you see it all the time.
What about
Sometimes we get
what about
things-
the options that I requested this committee to bring up on May 29th, July 16th?
That's something I'll let the chairman of the committee address.
You're the chair right now, I'm asking you that
I'll be
question. You're
I'm going
squashing
in for
it.
one agenda item, Bill.
Item.
You're squashing it. You're telling chairman not to do it.
I didn't respond to your request, Bill. You know that. We're talking about why is it being presented now? Why do we do any of our business now? This is the first time in my 8 years here that I've ever seen legislators run away from a debate, run away from a discussion. After something's been put on the agenda, to have something removed from the agenda. It's unprecedented. We talk about the optics. What are the optics of that, of running away from a discussion? You want to have a discussion? Let's have a discussion on the item. I haven't heard anything.
I'm right here.
I haven't heard anything of substance about the charter change itself. It's the time, and why we need to wait for input from the ethics board? What for?
The optics doesn't work.
This has nothing to do with the ethics
I'm also
board.
confused about the form that this has been sent out in. Typically, when a change is made to a law or to policy, old language is changed and it's stricken out. In new language, it's either underlined or it's a different color, it's highlighted. So what do we have this time? We have none of that in this. At the audit committee meeting, the next meeting, the audit committee meeting, we have number 12, discussion, amendments, deposits, and investment policy. It's done the traditional way. Items are highlighted out, and new items are highlighted in blue. Why is it different than any other?
You don't have a copy of the charter.
That's not the point, that's not what I'm asking you. Why is it different than the item we're going to be discussing in the audit committee later? Or we've done in the past? Maybe, are we changing it for the future? Why is it different than anything else?
It's a charter change, Bill.
It's a charter.
Previous charter changes was the same situation. It was what has been taken out and what's new. Why is this different?
You still haven't touched on the substance. Legislator Crowell.
Thanks for the insult.
Well, I think the whole kitchen sink is being brought into this. All that's being proposed is a charter change. Nobody is saying anything about firing anybody.
The optics look that way.
Please
The
don't
optics look that
interrupt
way.
me.
I did, the optics look that way.
Please don't interrupt me.
Thank you.
So all this is based on, that memo is based on speculation and conjecture. There's no facts behind it, there's nothing behind it. And since when now, in my 12 years, it should be understood by every legislator, which Legislator Crowley quoted me on, which is the absolute process, that is the discretion of the chair to either accept or reject committee items for the agenda.
3 times and then it goes on the
Doesn't
full.
matter.
3 times then it goes on the full.
Doesn't matter. Don't interrupt.
Just following your lead, Jim.
Whether or not, that is the sole discretion of a chair. But now we have legislators lobbying against the decision of the chair, which, as Legislator Yonke said, is unprecedented. Nor is it necessary, because the business is done right here in committee, and the decisions are made at the full. So there's no need for these type of memos to be circulating, in my opinion. Nobody's talking about the ethics committee, the outcome of the ethics committee. You're commingling everything into one thing, which is not the intent here, which does not speak to anything in the language here, and is not talking about firing anyone. It's a safeguard, and it's a safeguard, maybe possibly because of the turn of events, that we should have a voice in the removal of the county attorney, should we choose to exercise that for very egregious only reasons. And that's what this is about. And all this malarkey about ethics boards and decisions and everything else is really shameful.
Legislator Crowell.
So, when this was submitted, this for a resolution, who wrote this? Because there's no resolution, when this was written, who wrote it?
Who wrote it?
Yes.
I submitted it.
You submitted, so it didn't go through the law department, it didn't go through anybody else, it was just, you submitted it and that was
I
it?
submitted it.
So the law department hasn't vetted it, nothing? No, okay.
It's been in the public domain
Was it
for
submitted
2.5 weeks.
Was it,
I
it
would
was
thought.
taken off, right, it was taken off.
It wasn't taken off.
The meeting was called off,
Right.
okay, and then it was just put back, the meeting agenda was just put back on the other day, right?
About 2.5 weeks ago.
3 days ago. Well, nobody knew if the agenda was going to stay the same. Things change.
3
Fair.
days ago. It's been out longer than 3 days.
5 days ago, because there was a weekend.
It's a rule.
A weekend, yes, okay, 5 days, weekend, I'm not counting the 2 days off. So it wasn't presented to the law department, wasn't submitted for the county executive, so neither the law department nor the county executive reviewed or commented on this proposal. And it looks like it's a big change. Currently, we can only fire the county attorney for certain justified reasons. That takes away from us having to have a reason to fire the county attorney. With the change, we can fire him at will, the county executive can only fire him with a 2/3 concurrence. And that means if the law passes, the county attorney will serve the legislature's pleasure rather than the county executives. Is there another county where this structure of government exists? And you had brought up that there may be another county where this exists? Does it,
There is.
what is it?
I don't know. Amy, I thought you knew, I thought you told me that there was. I don't think that's.
There isn't, because Tompkins County has, it's a manager, so it's not the same form of government.
I don't think it's relative.
And Bob Bondi also brought this back up in 2008. And it's a pretty comprehensive memo for why he thought changing this section of law was a bad idea. Have you reviewed that memo?
I have.
Okay.
The veto message. You're talking about this veto message, yes.
This is a proposal to
It was-
change the
it was
balance.
overridden.
Yeah, if there was a balance, this is a proposal to change the balance of powers in our government as far as the authority to fire a county officer. The officer at issue is the legal advisor to the entire county, setting aside for a moment whether we even lawfully can make this change, should we make this change. The charter was reviewed by committees in 2010 and 2020 and never sought this change in law. Can somebody tell me why we're doing this now? What is the reason we're pushing this through? We couldn't deal with Camp Hurlick. We couldn't deal with the Ag Board. Couldn't get that done, but we want to get this through tonight, right now. And you wrote this. It hasn't even gone through legal. It hasn't been vetted.
It has been vetted.
Chairman Yonke,
Yeah,
so that wasn't said, and Rob was also,
I submitted.
okay, you submitted it to Rob, but you wrote it. So don't you think it should be put through our legal department? All our resolutions are.
If the law department has something to say about it, I'm sure they'll address it in either tonight or in writing.
I just think since it was shared with the media, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn saying this. There's a complaint currently pending with the Board of Ethics. It was submitted by the county attorney. No one is concerned with the optics while doing this, pending before them. Before they've rendered their opinion. I'm not on the committee, but I want to go on record saying I'm uncomfortable with this. I'm uncomfortable with the manner in which the proposal was rushed onto the agenda. Find it troubling that it didn't go through the proper channels of review to ensure the propriety of such a change. It's being presented to us in a sloppy form without transparency about the language being changed and without a memo briefing us on the full history of the section of law. In its current form, I don't even believe it's actionable, and on the basis I have the following objections. I'd like to object to the proceeding on this document in the current form, and I think that it should be honestly tabled pending us providing the memos addressing these issues from the county executive, the county law department, and I would like somebody to move to fully discharge us from the committee and have it presented to the full legislative body.
Through the chair, why would we present it to the county executive? We're asking permission.
Because right now he serves, I know, because you're protecting your friend, and that's what you're
I don't
doing.
think this has anything to do
You're
with
lobbying
anybody.
for your friend.
No, I think you're carrying the water.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we're talking about the office of the county
Correct.
attorney. We're not talking about any individuals.
We're not.
And I want to refrain from
And one
any
has
individuals.
nothing to
This
do
is a
with the other.
potential.
Well, why don't you wait until the ethics board comes out?
It
I
has
agree.
nothing
Yes,
to
it
do
does.
with it.
It's not related.
Wait a month.
It's not related.
Yes, it is. If you can't see it's not related, then there's an issue here.
Legislator Sage.
So we had a change, we had an amendment to this excluding the current county attorney. So that levels a playing field. So we're not even talking about our current county attorney, which would have nothing to do with any ethics complaint or anything
For the
else.
outside
For
work.
the outside work.
For the outside
He's in-
work.
Because he's
That's what the amendment was,
in the
yes.
chair, because he's in
Oh, for the outside work, I see.
midterm, that he's been here for a while. I felt that it shouldn't be applicable
Don't
to
change the
him.
rules in the middle of the game.
It wouldn't be applicable to him at this time. He would be exempt from that. But moving forward, we should implement the same rules that we have for our ADAs and and our county attorneys under him.
And also, just through the chair, I just want to make a point that we make charter changes all the time throughout the year. I've never heard of anything so emotion-filled. I mean, the charter is really just a basic document that the legislature can change at any time, and we vote on it at the full. We're trying to discuss issues here and not any particular person, I believe. So just want to point that out.
Legislator Crowley.
I just think this looks like an oligarchy, and they've led more than a legislator, in my opinion, and I want no part of it. I don't believe this serves the best interests of Putnam County. I think it serves politics and personalities.
Any member of the public wishing to speak? County Executive.
Yes, I'll stand right here. If it's okay, Chairman, I had a couple of questions to follow up as far as points of clarification. One, the amendment that was voted on, since it wasn't provided in the agenda, so there's nothing to read. You're saying that the exemption is specific just for outside income? Correct? Not for any other section of law, right? Because that would be kind of odd. It's just an exclusion for the current office holder for outside income. I just want to clarify that because there was clearly some discussion amongst legislators where it wasn't made clear. Is there an amendment you can read, so, like, is it?
Well, do you want me to address that?
Yeah, this is one, I mean, there's a couple of questions I have, but that's a big one that wasn't on the agenda, so.
Well, we just made the amendment this evening, so.
Yes.
It'd be nice to see.
Could you read that just for clarification, because there was discussion? I mean, you voted on it, you passed it, but it's affecting what you're going to be voting on soon.
I want to be able to see the difference.
So the reso says that he would not engage in outside practice. So I felt, which I thought of just this afternoon, that perhaps he's been here for a while, that we would exempt him from that restriction, but moving forward, keep it in the charter.
It's the existing language exempting the current county attorney. It's kind of simple.
I understand that, but just for one piece, oddly enough, that's probably part of your proposal that I find less objectionable. I would probably recommend, if anyone asked, if the administration thought, and I understand there was some dialogue about engaging with the executive, but quite frankly, the executive is part of the lawmaking process, including changing the charter. The legislature, being the people's body, crafts policy, but either requires the executive's signature for approval or veto. But had I been inquired, I actually find that one element less objectionable. I would just have suggested it be taken into effect at the start of the next, whatever the next term for county executive is. That would have been my recommendation, but that wasn't asked. I just wanted that clarification. Thank you. I heard some dialogue from some of your colleagues about other counties. Has there been any inquiries if there are any other counties have the type of language that you're putting in this charter change?
I have not done that research because Putnam County is a unique county. It's a small county, and I think we're a unique county. And this language does not seem like it's all that big a change. So I don't really, to be truthful, I don't really care what other counties do. I'm thinking of what's best for Putnam County.
So respectfully, I believe it's a major change. And while I'm not particularly fond of the language that's currently in this existing part of the charter, the voters did approve that when they overrode the veto of Executive Bob Bondi. I actually agree with Executive Bob Bondi's veto message that it really did shift power more to the legislature, and it undermines the executive branch. As a former legislator, maybe I would have taken a different position, but as an executive, obviously I'm going to be against it now.
I thought you would.
Yes. So as the Charter Review Commission, we do it every decade, right? There's a Charter Review Commission that reviews the charter, makes recommendations. Has this change ever been recommended by a Charter Review Commission?
Not that I know of, not that I'm aware of, but charter changes are made, as you know. We've had quite a few just in your short term here in office. And the county attorney himself at the last rules meeting was talking about a charter change as far as access to records. So it's not something that necessarily has to go through the charter review.
No, I agree with you. It doesn't. I know what you're referencing. I don't believe there was actually a draft charter change before anybody.
No, but it was certainly put out there.
And we have changed the charter, and we go through a process, and the charter is the county's governing document. We're also governed by, obviously, there's state home rule law, and I'll leave it to the attorneys and the law departments to vet out the very specific things that structure county government. The charter is a very important document. It is essentially our governing document. So I wouldn't dismiss a change to the charter, particularly when it speaks to how a body can remove a public officer. That is significant. I wanted to ask one other question too. The legislature is bringing this up. I understand they canceled the meeting earlier this month. The agenda was removed from the county website, so it gets put up. I understand the chair's point about the initial agenda being up, but I don't necessarily feel there's been a lot of time for the public to engage on this, because no one knew if it was really going to come up this evening or not. But is it the intent of the legislature that if it is reported out of this committee, that it be brought on for the full next week?
Yes.
That to me is shocking. Shocking, Mr. Chairman. We have had to pass laws under a declared emergency where I was criticized for moving things at record speed, where we still had to go through a regular committee process. We still had to go through the next month. This is essentially trying to change the county charter in less than a week and a half by putting it on the committee agenda right now, and then lightning speed bringing it to the full legislature next week for a very substantive change. Now, one other question regarding, and I may have a couple more, but another question that I had was, it was insinuated that so much has had to do with conflicts when the county attorney, there is a conflict between the executive and the legislature. And I understand that. But what hasn't been stated is the legislature currently has the independent authority to remove the county attorney if there is a perceived conflict between the executive and the legislature. They already have it. And there's a section of law that delineates what the justifications are, where the legislature, independent of the executive, and I would say rightfully, by 2/3 vote, can remove the county attorney. They have that ability. What this proposed charter change does is remove that justification entirely. Yes?
The limitations are very strict.
So would it be, I think since it's referenced, and I'm sharing how this is so significant, would it be appropriate, can I ask the committee to read that section of law? I can read it if you'd like.
Go ahead.
So the section 8.05, and this was part of the section, I think, that was adjusted in 2008. So again, that was a lengthy process. Whenever the interests of the county executive and the legislature are inconsistent, the county attorney shall represent the interests of the legislature. In such event, nothing herein shall be construed to deny the county executive access to obtaining legal counsel at county expense. Thank goodness for that. County attorney shall comply with any and all lawful and permissible resolutions which may be adopted by the legislature. If said resolution is vetoed by the county executive, the county attorney shall represent the legislature only where the veto is overridden. If the override fails, the county attorney shall represent the will of the county executive. I think that's an important justification. That's an important justification. Removing that justification, essentially making the county attorney at will, does a few things. It fundamentally changes the checks and balances in a major way, where the county attorney, like other department heads, is appointed by the county executive, affirmed by vote of the county legislature. What you're doing, and the county executive has the authority, has a responsibility to administer county departments. When you have the county attorney as the sole legal advisor for the county, now already the executive is somewhat hamstrung, because if I wanted to remove a county attorney, not that I am, I can terminate based on pleasure of, but it requires a 2/3 concurrence vote of the legislature.
Thank you.
What you're doing is flipping it so the legislature can remove 2/3 vote, which is by 2/3 vote, for any justification. I don't know of any other county that has this. I think there's a good reason. I think it completely upends checks and balances. I think the other counties that may have a similar model, and I think this is important, it's because they don't have a county executive. If they have a county administrator, that's fine. Some have an appointed county administrator. I have friends I worked with in Congress that are county administrators in upstate New York. They're simply serving really the board of the legislature. That's not the structure of government that we have in Putnam County. The people of Putnam County have an elected county executive, they have an elected county legislature, there's supposed to be checks and balances. I believe this removes that. I'm also troubled by the fact that it does not appear to have in statute, a required referendum for voter approval to enact into law. Has that been reviewed by the law department or anyone that could this be construed as being mandatory if it curtails or removes executive power to remove a public officer? Has that been vetted by you, Mr. Chairman, since you submitted the law, or anybody else?
I've reviewed it with counsel.
Okay, I think that is a flaw, that we have a law department for a reason. The fact that you didn't go to the law department, I think, is troubling and speaks to some of the other concerns your colleagues share, because you should be able to go to the law department to draft these. I believe it absolutely could be subject to a mandatory referendum. It should be subject to a mandatory referendum. And why wouldn't the legislature consider amending this to just self-impose a referendum? There's nothing stopping the legislature from amending this to require a voter referendum.
Are you suggesting that the intent of this would be for arbitrary and capricious reasons, that this legislative body would act in that manner?
Actually, the law that you're changing, you're removing the justification that is required for removal of the county attorney by 2/3 vote. So you are actually quite literally removing the justification so that you could, yes, remove the county attorney. You could, and not necessarily you, legislator, but future legislatures. This is something that will change the structure of our charter in county government for many years to come, unless a future legislature and county executive changes it back. But yes, there's positions that are term positions as public officers. There's those that serve at the pleasure of the county executive, or the county executive, not that I would, but if something is going in the wrong direction of the administration and division of this county, and we think someone's harming the county, then I can simply say, we're going in a new direction. And this gives you that authority, that you could do that. That's what it does, by removing that justification. Look, clearly there's a disagreement. This was not shared with the executive prior to submission, nor does it have to be, but to limit unnecessary back and forth, to limit unnecessary vetoes, engagement is important from both bodies. That clearly didn't happen with this. It absolutely is getting rushed through. I believe it should require a referendum, and I believe it absolutely creates, it upends checks and balances, and clearly, to me, if you feel strongly about this and moving forward, it creates a conflict between the executive and the legislature, and I believe it's important to go on record in sharing it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
James Maxwell, thanks for letting me speak. Perception is reality. Perception is observation plus judgment. What I just saw, here's my judgment. You're a circular firing squad, each county executive in the middle of it, far away.
Anyone else? All right. Seeing no further discussion, do I have a motion to approve?
Before you go there, Chairman, we have an additional that has to be approved. We just given this, weren't you? Chapter C from the Charter, Article 8, Form of Law. Our clerk just gave it to us, don't we have to add it on?
It was just for a reference.
Do I have a motion to approve? No, do I have a motion? I need a motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I'll get Legislator Adenizio to finish the meeting.
Moving on to number 9 is FYI, litigation report. Number 10 is other business. And there's no other business. I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.